Aloha and welcome to the first ever Pixorama Pixel review. I thought it would be kind of a fun idea to do reviews of pixel art that I see in games or online or that just happens to make its way into my line of sight in general. So we're gonna set the bar high in this first video. I mean high. We're going straight to Lucasarts. Yes, listen to that eagle. Lucasarts, if you don't know, was the studio responsible for some of the most epic computer games ever. Monkey Island, Maniac Mansion on the NES, and of course the sequel to Maniac Mansion, Day of the Tentacle, as well as like a bazillion Star Wars titles, of course. And then in 1992, Lucasarts drops the bomb. Boom. Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis. An original title, and still to this day one of my favorite games. What Lucasarts managed to do with the tech of the day is actually pretty astounding. Consider the fact that they were using the first version of Photoshop, which had been created by a couple of ex-pats from Industrial Light and Magic. And I think Adobe Photoshop came out in 1990. So this was brand new tech, this was a brand new tool for them. They were pretty much in uncharted territory. Computer graphics in general were pretty darn basic, and computing power was very, very limited. So technically speaking, they didn't have a lot to work with, and the potential to express themselves creatively was just really restricted. And despite that, they did some incredible stuff.
Hey, can we get on with it? Can we?
Yes, let's dive back into the 90s and check out Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis. So, here we go. There's our nice little LucasArts logo, and some moody music, and some drop shadows. Whew, ahead of their time. And the classic Indy logo in pixel form. A nice little design choice straight off the bat here, making this background entirely out of blue shades and black, so that this logo pops. It really is the little things, isn't it? Now just to remind you again of the time frame we're in here, this game required that you had a computer capable of showing 256 colors. But not necessarily all at once, let's not go crazy. But that gives you an idea of the restriction that we're faced with here, creating this game. And here's Indy! Holy Takeout Tuesdays, what an entrance.
Alright Jones, how you gonna find that statue and all this junk?
There are two versions of this game that came out actually. There was the original version and then there was the talkie version. And the talkie version had, well, you guessed it, voice actors, who were great. But we're not here to review that. Let's freeze this for a second. So one thing we can note about this scene in particular is that this scene is all about lighting effects. As I mentioned earlier, they've used a few shades of blue here and designed an entire scene around that. And again, this whole scene was designed to serve two purposes. One, to be a backdrop to the title, and two, of course, to be a very moody kind of set for Indiana Jones to explore. And there's a lot to unpack in this scene. There really is a heap we could talk about. But one thing I want to draw attention to in particular is the shading. Sometimes, still to this day, I hear this debate about which way of doing pixel art is the right way. Should you do dithering or should you do clustering? Honestly, it doesn't matter. Whatever you're comfortable with, whatever you think makes your art look great. Here in this game, we see a mixture of both. There's some dithering here, there's some clustering there, and there's some... God knows what that is there. It's all good. But in any case, let's move on. Now, this isn't a game review, so let's just skip ahead to another cool scene here. Why is this scene so cool? Because kapow! That's why. Oh, by the way, my name is Jim McLeod. And weirdly, I did actually study animation at university. But this isn't me, this is just a strange coinky-dank. Anyway, that's not really why this scene is cool. Oh, thank you. I was just about to ask if you could do that. Just look at the details here. Look at the yummy, yummy details. Again, with a palette of just 256 colors and a resolution of 320 by 200, they've managed to design this gorgeous room here with very natural looking lighting. You can see that light spilling in from the windows. There are clouds outside in the sky. There are buildings out there, you can see the windows in them. And also the scene composition itself. Take a look at where the camera is positioned. The player is definitely taking an observational role, just standing outside the set here looking in. But you can see that the camera is positioned perfectly to show you everything you need to see within the scene. But enough of clouds and lighting and books. Let's skip ahead again. Oh, but after this bookcase gag.
Uh-oh.
Classic. From now on, I'm just going to jump to particular scenes without really taking care of the story, so sorry if it's a bit disorienting, but there's stuff we need to see. And if you want to see the rest, play the game. So here is another scene from the university where the game begins, and one of the things I really, really love about this game is that, and undoubtedly because of George Lucas and his film work, every single shot in this has a very filmic look to it. Going back to that perspective again, you can see here that we're once again sort of looking at things from outside the action, but we have a really nice view of the whole room. this wide sort of perspective of everything. And it's mostly because this game is an exploration game. It's a point-and-click adventure, which LucasArts was famous for, these kind of games. So you need to be able to see the entire scene and all the objects within it. And speaking of objects, this scene gives us a couple of really cool close-ups. Now, a lot of, if not all of these kind of close-up scenes were done with a rotoscoping method, whereby you would either set up the scene in reality and take a photo, or you would paint it or draw it and then scan the finished product into a computer and either touch it up in Photoshop or redraw it in Photoshop. And this was a very, very painstaking method back then. There were definitely no filters, and the image adjustment tools were pretty limited. So really, they were just picking colors from a palette and clicking them onto the canvas. It was basically like using MS Paint to design a game. Imagine how long and arduous that process would have been. Now, here's something else that's quite cool and also a bit of a mind bender. Because not only were some of these shots and sets rotoscoped, but all of the characters were also rotoscoped. In an old LucasArts publication, Colette Michaud, the then art director of LucasArts, gave a little rundown of how these characters were rotoscoped, how the process was done.
We begin the process of rotoscoping by videotaping a person, preferably in bright sunlight, against a solid color background. We then connect the video camera to a Mac 2 and use a frame grabber utility to isolate a frame or sequence of frames on the computer screen. After selecting the frames we want for animation, we transport them into Photoshop. In this program, we mask out the background of each frame and make any necessary adjustments to color or size. These frames become the cells in our animation. We transport them to IBM, where we use Depaint Animator to string the cells together in animation. When the motions look right, we reduce the videotaped image to the size character we need, and draw directly on top of each video cell. When an animation is finished, there's usually no sign of digitization. After animating the characters in Depaint Animator, we transport the artwork into a proprietary software program, where we fine-tune and choreograph the characters' movements. Then we simply hand over a disc containing the animations to the programmers, who wire them into the game.
Whew. Yeah, so quite a process, but you can see that it actually paid off. I mean, a lot of these scenes have some really, really cool little moments, like this one that we're watching right now, where these character animations and the little sprites are just fantastic. One of the biggest priorities for the game makers was getting this sense of realism and expressivity into these tiny little pixel characters. So by using this rotoscope method, they were able to do it. Okay, let's flash forward. Here we are in the jungles of Tikal, and you can see here that Indy and Sophia have arrived and are about to explore some things. The palette here is lush and green, and I think the forest here looks every bit as dark and mysterious as it would in real life. But actually the palette isn't really what I want to focus on here, even though the jungle scene itself is lovely. I actually want to draw attention to the way the characters scale, and the way that they move in and out of the scenery, because in this game there's a lot of moving backwards and forwards and behind objects, and I have absolutely no idea how they achieved this kind of waypointing system in a 2D game. Keep in mind that this is, of course, not a 3D game, this is all 2D, this is pixels on a flat canvas. So how do you achieve a waypointing system where you don't have the benefits of a 3D set? You don't have blockers that you can just put in the way. You don't have clear boundaries that the character can walk on. You have to somehow define this movement system on a 2D canvas. Unfortunately, I have no idea how this was done. I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't find it in my researching for this game. But the other point is the scaling. The characters obviously moving back and forth. They have to scale, get bigger and smaller. And even at the smaller scales in this game, I find that the details are really clear. You can still see the characters emoting very clearly, as we'll see later in one of the scenes coming up. Now, I tried to find out whether the scaling system was actually automatic, whether it was an algorithm, or whether they actually redesigned the sprites for various sizes. And it looks like, from what I can see, there's only one size of character sprite. And the software itself does the scaling. So I guess they came up with some cool algorithm that still makes the characters very crisp at small sizes. Let's skip ahead to a typically indie moment. Now, these temple scenes and the indoor scenes that they do in this game, I've already mentioned, I just love them. I think the atmospheric qualities of these scenes, especially with the restrictions they faced, were just handled really well. But once again, what's great here are the lighting effects. Just take a look at how that light comes spilling in from outside. The way those highlights kind of blow out in the doorway, and then that soft lighting on the opposite wall, it's just really pretty. And then up close to the camera, you've got this nice warm lighting, highlighting the focal point of the scene, where we've got the skeleton there. And this isn't really a very impressive scene at all. From here, they just keep getting better. As you would expect in an Indiana Jones game, Indy visits some very exotic locales, including the Azores, where we get another look at this scaling technique here. And in this scene, I'd love to focus on the faces, actually. So this guy that answers the door, you can just see that his head barely pops out. But somehow still these artists have managed to get so much personality into those few pixels. Just check out the way his beard waggles when he talks, and those thick little eyebrows he has. Somehow within about 4 pixels width, the animators have managed to give this guy so much character.
Do you know where Atlantis is?
His little buck teeth. He just looks perfectly matched to how he sounds.
Well, yes, of course I do.
Oh, do tell.
I'm going to skip ahead. We could talk about 100 scenes in this game, including the beautiful Algerian scenes, the marketplaces, the desert. These are all fantastic scenes, but I really want to get to the guts of this game, the really cool stuff. And the guts of this game, as the title of course implies, are in the fabled lost city of Atlantis. Ooh, on the way, check out this gorgeous scene. Again with just such a lovely palette and this cinematic camera angle. Just lovely. Moving ahead, this part of the game took so goddamn long. Seriously, I remember playing this game as a kid with my brother, and we spent days, maybe weeks, actually, stuck in this ridiculous dungeon down here. I mean, we just didn't have the brain capacity to figure it out, I suppose. We eventually did, somehow. I don't know how. We didn't have the internet back then, so yikes. I guess we got smarter, or something. Anyway, there is one thing I would like to check out before we leave this scene behind, and it's the room that you come to after completing this hellish nightmare of a puzzle. The so-called map room, where Indy makes a Wookiee sound, and then finds himself in a room with a scale model of Atlantis at the center.
Either Atlantis is a lot smaller than we thought, or we've found some kind of map or scale model.
Okay, it's not that impressive, I just wanted to hear the Wookiee sound again. It's weird, that all seemed far more impressive when I was 8. Anyway, at this point Sophia gets kidnapped, and then we're off on the Indy part of the game trying to rescue her. We change tack completely and go on the adventure part of the game, the action-adventure part. We have to enter a submarine, we have to rescue her, all while sailing towards the city of Atlantis. All very pretty here under the water, and then finally you find the entrance to the ancient city itself. Once inside, you can see where the art direction really goes to town here. I assume there was a lot of research put into everything that Lucasarts could find about Atlantis, because a lot of this stuff is mentioned in old texts. A lot of the stylistic choices they've made have some sort of basis in the historical record, or at least they've expanded on styles that they think would fit with the whole Atlantean myth. So you get this whole theme of Minoan statuary and architecture, and Grecian architecture and statuary as well. Some of these ideas and the way they've been executed are really fantastic. And of course, running through each and every scene, especially here near the end of the game, everything's got this great cinematic sense of drama to it. The idea here was definitely to create a foreboding atmosphere with all this monumental imagery. We have this oversized, intimidating scale to everything. And it's all made stranger by these somehow eerily familiar relics and architectural features. We don't recognize them per se, but LucasArts designed everything here to contain elements of old world cultures, but give them kind of an unrecognizable twist, so we can't quite place them. And it also gives them this link to something that could have been, you know, that all that we see now has branched off from this one parent culture, and that's why we have this odd familiarity with everything. I absolutely love some of the chambers down in this Atlantean city. This one in particular, all these little weird rooms with odd machinery and mechanical elements, they're just very cool. Once again, we have these amazing lighting techniques, this beautiful streaming lava coming out of these statues and illuminating the whole space. As we saw at the beginning of the scene, Indy walks in from sort of a cave-like region through this door, and you get this prelude to what you're about to see. Of course, there's that cinematic drama again. As he walks forward, the room is revealed, and there's this incredible statue with lava pouring out of its mouth.
What an archaeological find.
Even Indy himself seems impressed. Onward we go, and while I do encourage you to play this game and check it out for yourself, I have to warn you that some parts are quite laborious. But this brings us to one of the last couple of scenes I want to look at, and just look at this. This is just so gorgeous. Sophia's creepy-ass voice aside, I want to just draw attention quickly to the perspective again here. A long shot of this enormous chamber, and the gorgeous structures here, just giving us a real sense of scale. The light sources here are twofold. We have that Atlantean light above the door, casting that pale greenish-blue glow, and then there's that lava pit at the center of the room. And after leading our eyes down to that pit, we're then left to look at the hints of disaster given to us. Something about this place very clearly isn't right, and we can see a bunch of skeletons that aren't just lying about, they're scattered about. And that's not the only thing, of course. We can see here up close to the camera, there's a skull that just doesn't look right. There's just something about that is not ready for a Sunday brunch with us. And then as Indy decides to explore the room, we finally have the big reveal here. And, sorry, once again, spoiler alert, but these skeletons are obviously not human. Or they were human, but are not anymore. But the point of this room is the cinematic technique of the long reveal. This panoramic view of the room, which only gets revealed as you move through it. And what's clever about it, of course, is just like with that lava room before, the player, him or herself, is actually guiding that reveal. So by moving through the space, you determine how that reveal happens. Now here we get a nice close-up of Sophia's necklace, and then this cool little cinematic. And again, even at these minute sizes, take a look at how big these sprites are. We can see their gestures so clearly. We can see them talking, we can see them holding things out. This is just so cool, the way the artists achieved this level of detail in such tiny little sprites. Then there's this very cute little animation here of the evil spirit exploding. Look at him, so cute and pixely. And we skip ahead again to the last scene I want to talk about today. And that is the climactic scene of the entire game. Just take a look at the color palette and the composition here, the perspectives, everything here is just so neat. Now this room is actually the final chamber, but they don't want to reveal things too quickly, so they give you this perspective from above. From here you go into another chamber, which this is all so memorable to me from my childhood, just these colors and the way these scenes are set up, it's so neat. And finally you make your way back into that initial chamber. And now the true Atlantean wackiness begins.
Here's your shining city.
Not what I expected, that's for sure.
Not what I expected either, but jeez, is it beautiful. I love how they start with that shot of the crazy apparatus above and then tilt down to the city here. Lucasfilm could easily have made a film out of this, and I really wish they had, because the story in this game is just so good. It's just so much better than the Crystal Skull. What was that even? So finally, Indy and Sophia reach the core of the Mega Gargantuan Colossus machine, whatever it's called. And of course, surprise, the Nazis arrive. I like the way the lighting in this room shifts. Not just because the machine has been activated, but also because the evil Nazis are here. And of course, the room needs to look threatening and foreboding. There's a bit of monologuing from the villains, and of course their evil plan gets set into motion. And then there's this neat little animation sequence, and it starts with this Nazi goon giving his hair a little bit of a swish. Then we have some neat lightning effects and particles flashing around. There's a transformation, zap zap, and of course things go not quite to plan. But this is such a fantastic little sequence. There's so much going on. Lighting effects, particle effects, characters moving to and fro. This is a very complex little sequence for a pixel game. Of course, in the end, Indy outfoxes the villain, if you're smart enough to be Indy and can outfox the villain, who then decides to try the experiment on himself. And once again, we have this crazy little animation sequence. Lots going on here. And, of course, things don't really go as planned. And, yeah, we explode into a nice little particle shower. Aww. And then Atlantis decides to explode, because that's what happens at the end of every single Indiana Jones movie. Very cool sequence here. The animations here are just wonderful. And in fact, I'm just gonna let you sit back and enjoy the ride here, because it really is something to watch. So, here we go. Enjoy the end of Indiana Jones and the fate of Atlantis.
Hurry! You know, a lot of my discoveries seem like tall tales even to me. At least there's some evidence this time.
Then again, maybe not.
So great. Just so awesome. And yes, a little smoocheroo on a submarine.
What was that for?
To ease the pain.
roll credits. And so, yeah, that's just a glimpse at Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis and why I just love the graphic style so much. This game is just stunning from start to end, and it just keeps getting better as you progress. And seen through modern eyes, like looking at it today, of course it's dated, but at the same time, this is such a wonderful relic of the golden age of pixel art, I think. Or rather, the dawning of the golden age of pixel art. Because this really was one of the first games to really take advantage of these systems with 256 colors and these technologies like rotoscoping, and just really a phenomenal effort from a very small team. And as I said before, Lucasarts went on to create some amazingly iconic games, and they really pushed the boundaries of where pixel art could go, and made transitions into new styles of art as well. But their pixel art games really are some of the best out there. So there you have it. That's our first ever pixel art review. I guess it was more of a kind of love fest. I am a bit biased when it comes to that game, just a little bit. And seeing as I came up with this whole pixel review idea, I guess I have to come up with some sort of rating system as well.
So hooey, let's rate this thing.
Taking into account art direction, stylistic decisions, sprite, set, and palette design, I'm gonna give this game 9.6 flunkles. 9.6 flunkles. And that's it for my first ever Pixorama Pixel review. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want to see more, you know what to do. Hit the like button. Also, subscribe to my channel if you're feeling funky, and make sure to leave comments if you want to see something in particular in the future. Thanks for watching. I'm Jimzip. Ciao.